So, the birth of Yeshua. This is kind of a simple thing. I mean, it's quite well known that Yeshua was not, like, there's nothing in the scriptures that says when he was born. Um, I'm sure most people know that, but just kind of getting into that. So I guess first, like, this is going to be breaking the first commandment, and I guess we'll kind of get into that a little bit, but it's also, like, obviously breaking the ninth commandment, like, just lying. Um, but, yeah, like, okay, so this first quote is from, and actually, like, so a good video to check out is Hexmas Origins by Joshua. He kind of went into some things a bit more in depth, and he also has like a really good Christmas video. But this is just like kind of a short one if you're maybe like wavering on like his birth and stuff. So this is a quote, and I can share these quotes too, like the links to them if you really want evidence of the quotes. But so yeah, this is from the Story of Santa Claus by William S. Walsh, and I think in this link, when I put it, it might not have the quote, so that's kind of unfortunate. But so this is quote: "Now get clearly into your head one very important fact. Although at the time when Augustine visited England, and so this is actually a person that we'll get into later, visited England, the date of Christmas had been fixed upon as December 25th. There is no biblical reason why this should be so. The Gospels say nothing about the season of the year when Christ was born. On the other hand, they do tell us that the shepherds were then guarding their flocks in the open air. Hence, many of the early fathers of the church considered it most likely that the Nativity took place either in the late summer or the early fall. The point was of no great mention or moment to them, as the early church made more fuss over the death day of a great or holy person than over his birthday. The birthday is only the day when man is born into mortality. The death day chronicles his birth into immorality." And so an important note is that Jews, they didn't celebrate births. I probably should have put some quotes of that in here, but if you are really like wanting that, I can put that in the comments too. But yeah, they didn't celebrate births, so that's why you don't know when like anybody was born, especially the Messiah. Like that's why they didn't celebrate it. The important fact then, which I have asked you to get clear into your head, is that the fixing of the date as December 25th was a compromise with paganism. Because December 25th at the time was the winter solstice, and so there was a lot of pagan traditions like Saturnalia, one of the big ones, because that was what the Romans did, and it's just trying to incorporate that into the true faith. But as you read in Colossians 2, Christ spoiled those principalities and those traditions, because he was even rebuking that there's these people that are worshiping in vain God through their traditions, leaving aside the commandments of God. So now the weather during this time, November and December, because as in the quotes you saw before, it kind of points to the opposite, like that the shepherds were outside during the time. And so, like, let's look at some verses. So Ezra 10 verse 9, "Then all the men of Judah and Benjamin gathered themselves together unto Jerusalem within 3 days. It was the 9th month, on the 20th day of the month." And so this corresponds to Chislev, because when you look at the Jewish calendar, it's not aligned to the Gregorian calendar. So like Chislev is the 9th month on their calendar, but it corresponds to November/December. So it was the 9th month on the 20th day of the month, and all the people sat in the street of the house of God, trembling because of this matter, and for the great rain. So at this time, it's a rainy season, and it might also be like it's gonna also be cold too. Um, although, yeah, and so this during this time, it's normal for them to be inside, especially since it's gonna be rainy and it's probably gonna be cold. And so even we see in this next verse, um, Jeremiah 36 verse 22. Now the king sat in the winter house. He's in a winter house for the winter in the 9th month, and there was a fire on the hearth burning before him. So it's customary to be inside where it's warm with a fire during this time because it's gonna be cold outside. Like he was in his winter house. It's kind of interesting that they use that word, but like why would it be called a winter house? Like why would he be in that? And so maybe actually I'll check what the Strong's is for that word real quick, see if it's anything interesting, because I've not checked that before. At least I don't think so. No, it doesn't look like it's anything interesting. But okay. So now we know that during this time, that's the 9th month, when people say is like Christmas, or whatever, like because Christmas is at the depth of like, or it's gonna be at like the depth of when it's like cold and stuff. So it's gonna be at this time, in Bethlehem, because that's where Yeshua was born. It's going to be the most rainy, the most cold. So let's like, would it really make sense? But so yeah, Luke 2 verse 7. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. And there were in the same country. That's interesting. Okay. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. So again, they're outside in the night, like because everywhere you go, like it's also going to be the most cold at the night because the sun isn't out. So it's going to be even colder during the night than during the day, and so it's going to be also rainy, like most likely, because that's kind of how it is during this season. So why would they be like? It'd make much more sense for them to be inside at this time. And so again, there's this Roman census that occurs also in the same time, like setting like a tax. I don't really know too much about that, but and it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was, and so it was like a decree for the whole world to be taxed. The whole world, which, like, why would you send this decree when it's like the worst time to really, like the worst time to really do such a thing? It's like, what is it? It's like so there's a school, right? Or let's see here. How do I even? Yeah, I guess like so. There's a high school that's nearby, right? And so it'd be like me. It'd be like and I don't even know. Like people are going to work around like the cold times, so they're not like they're gonna try to avoid it as much as possible. Like when you go to like when it's cold outside, you don't see that many people outside, and so they're not going to make like it would make no sense. And all went to be taxed, everyone of his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house of and lineage of David. So then also, like, they're having to travel during this time. Like, it's just a huge inconvenience for everybody. So this is a quote from the Companion Bible by E.W. Bollinger. The Roman authorities, in imposing such a census taking for the hated and unpopular foreign tax, would not have enforced the imperial decree at the most inconvenient and inclement season of the year, by compelling the people to enroll themselves at their respective cities in December. In such a case, they would naturally choose the line of least resistance and select a time of year that would cause least friction and interference with the habits and pursuits of the Jewish people. This would be in the autumn. Of course, they're not certain on that, but when the agricultural round of the year was complete, and the people generally more or less at liberty to take advantage, as we know many did, of the opportunity of going up to Jerusalem for the Feast of Tabernacles, the crowning feast of the Jewish year. To take advantage of such a time would be to the Romans the simplest and most natural policy, whereas to attempt to enforce the edict of registration for the purposes of imperial taxation in the depth of winter, when traveling for such a purpose, would have been terribly resented, as Joseph, and perhaps have brought about a revolt, would never have been attempted by such an astute ruler as Augustus. So again, I could send this quote to you too. It's just directly from it. You could look it up too, but I'm happy to send in the comments. And so, is this based off of fact or superstition? Because you don't see it anywhere in the Bible. So, like, what facts are you basing it off of? Because we're supposed to worship in spirit and in truth. We must worship in spirit and truth. That's what the true worshipers will be doing. Because those that are outside the kingdom, Revelation 14, or Revelation 14 verse 15, for without are, etc., those that love and make a lie. And actually, maketh is it means practice, but and then you also see in Revelation 21 verse 8 that the liars will be having their portion with the second death. So that's no good. You don't want to be a liar. So Acts 17, where so this is Paul. Then Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill and said, Ye men of Athens, I perceive that in all things ye are too superstitious. For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar with this inscription, To the unknown God, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship, him declare I unto you. So superstitious, if you're not aware, it means a belief or practice resulting from ignorance, fear of the unknown, trust in magic or chance, a false conception of causation. Okay, and so now we have Augustine. Is that the same person I mentioned? Yeah, Augustine. So we have this guy. So this is from his like sermons or whatever, and so this is before the year 1411. And again, I can send this quote, the link to this in the description if necessary. But so this man was basically tasked to like convert a bunch of people, and so let's read what he had to say about these dates and if he was superstitious or not. You see, he sent a man ahead of him, John, to be born at the time of year when the days were beginning to diminish, while he himself was born when the days were beginning to grow. This would prefigure what John himself said, he must grow while I must diminish. Human life, you see, has to fade away in itself, gain force in Christ, so that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for the one who died for all and rose again, and that each one of us might say what the apostle says, I live, though no longer I, but it is Christ who is living in me. He, you see, must grow while I diminish. Well, where is this in the Bible? Because this is even the same thing that the pagans, like the reason why they worshipped on this day, because it was the birth of the unconquerable son or whatever, or the rebirth of the unconquerable son, for this same reason. That it was like the shortest day of the year, and this is the same argument that Augustine is pushing. And he was tasked by Pope Gregory. I don't know which one, but Pope Gregory. You can look that up. So Jeremiah 17:5. Thus saith the Lord, Cursed be the man that trusteth in Augustine, and man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departeth from the Lord. So, not just a quick quote, the meaning behind the date, because you're going to be like, oh, when I look up the winter solstice, it's not on December 25th, it's on December 21st. Well, as I was kind of mentioning at the beginning, this is not what it was always, because before the Gregorian calendar was the Julian calendar. So this is what was being used at the time to determine the date. And so this is just a quote, and I can say this quote too. Under the old Roman calendar, known as the Julian calendar, the winter solstice occurred on December 25th, but when it was reordered into the Gregorian calendar, the solstice fell back a few days. The early Christians, however, kept Christmas on the older date. The Roman feast of Saturnalia occurred around the time of the winter of the solstice, and was celebrated with feasting and intense partying, which included role reversal games and gift giving. The winter solstice has been acknowledged for centuries by cultures around the world long before the birth of Christ. Scandinavians were noting the solstice as the holiday called the Feast of Yule, like Y-U-L-E, and that's the same name here, according to the Royal Observatory. So, if there's no truth in December 25th being the birth of Yeshua, and we were never even commanded to do that. We were commanded to keep his the 10 Commandments. That's even what Yeshua came to do. He told us to keep his Father's commandments, not to go start creating our own traditions and men, because that's even what he spoiled on the cross. So, yeah.